By the 1870s, Britain had already become the world's greatest trading power. But something fundamental was changing. The empire was no longer a loose web of ports, merchants, and agreements. It began to function like a single, disciplined machine designed to lock the world into Britain's economic and strategic orbit. This phase, later called high imperialism, was driven not only by profit, but by fear. Fear that rivals would seize markets, routes, and territories if Britain hesitated. At home, Britain was still shaped by the Industrial Revolution. Factories demanded raw materials in massive quantities. Investors searched for secure places to move their capital. Shipyards needed constant orders to stay alive. Newspapers filled pages with maps colored red, heroic stories, and imperial victories shaping public pride. Politicians also realized something useful. Foreign expansion distracted people from poverty, strikes, and political conflict inside Britain itself. India remained the heart of the system. After the uprising of 1807, the British Crown took direct control, ending company rule and turning India into the empire's central pillar. It was a vast market, a major source of taxes, and a supplier of cotton, tea, jute, wheat, and above all, labor. Railways, telegraphs, canals, and courts were built across the subcontinent, but their purpose was control and extraction. Indian production became tightly linked to British industry, while Indian society was managed through bureaucracy, policing, and policies that encouraged division rather than unity. One of Britain's most powerful tools was the Indian Army. Britain simply did not have enough soldiers of its own to police such a huge empire. Indian troops were deployed far beyond India, fighting in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. This created a striking contradiction, an empire enforced in part by people who were themselves denied freedom within it. Control of routes became just as important as control of land. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 transformed global travel. The sea journey to India and Asia was suddenly far shorter. Britain moved quickly to secure its influence. It bought shares in the canal in 1875 and occupied Egypt in 1882, claiming the move was temporary. It was not. Egypt became a permanent strategic link in a chain that included Gibraltar, Malta, Cyprus, and Aden, protecting the lifeline of empire. Across the Middle East and the Indian Ocean, Britain tightened its grip. Aden guarded shipping lanes. Agreements with rulers in the Persian Gulf kept rivals out. The empire was evolving into a system of global logistics, ports, coaling stations, telegraph cables, and narrow choke points that controlled movement and trade. Meanwhile, the balance of power was shifting. Germany unified in 1871 and began challenging Britain industrially and militarily. France sought to recover prestige after defeat in Europe. Russia pushed steadily south in Central Asia. The rivalry between Britain and Russia, known as the Great Game, became a tense struggle fought through spies, diplomacy, and pressure along distant borders. Britain feared that if Russia reached Afghanistan or Persia, India itself would be threatened. To prevent this, Britain turned neighboring regions into buffers. Afghanistan became a hard frontier where Britain fought wars to block Russian influence. Persia became a zone of competition. In Burma, a series of wars ended with full annexation in 1886, adding the territory to British India and securing access to Southeast Asian trade. In Malaya and Singapore, Britain expanded control over tin and rubber, creating another highly profitable Asian base. China also played a major role. Earlier victories in the Opium Wars had forced China to open ports and accept unequal treaties. Hong Kong became a vital base. As other powers carved out spheres of influence, Britain fought to protect its commercial dominance, often through pressure and naval power rather than outright conquest. Empire here meant access and advantage, not full occupation. The most dramatic expansion came in Africa. For decades, Europeans had stayed mostly along the coasts. By the 1880s, new medicines, modern weapons, railways, and steamships made deep expansion possible. Competition between European powers turned Africa into a race. Leaders spoke of civilization and ending slavery, but the real motives were land, minerals, trade routes, and strategic advantage. In 1884 and 1885, European powers met at the Berlin Conference to divide Africa on paper. The borders they drew ignored local societies completely. Britain pushed aggressively, seeking to protect routes and expand its reach. In southern Africa, Britain clashed with African kingdoms and Boer republics. The Zulu War of 1879 shocked Britain when a British force was destroyed at Isandlwana, before Britain returned with overwhelming force and conquered the region. In West Africa, British influence spread along the Niger. blending private companies with government rule to form vast colonies. In East Africa, Britain established control in Kenya and Uganda, building railways inland and reshaping land systems. Resistance was met with violence and colonial order was imposed. Britain's control of Egypt also dragged it into Sudan. The modest revolt challenged imperial authority, and the death of General Gordon in 1885 became a rallying cry in Britain. By 1898, after brutal campaigns using modern firepower, Sudan fell under British control in all but name. Everywhere the same pattern appeared. Traders and missionaries arrived first, followed by advisors, treaties, protectorates, and finally direct rule. Resistance was labeled rebellion. Conquest was described as restoring order. Infrastructure was built, but wealth flowed outward. Alongside this, Britain governed settler colonies differently. In Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, European settlers demanded self-rule. Britain granted autonomy while maintaining loyalty to the Crown, laying early foundations for the Commonwealth. Yet even here, indigenous populations suffered dispossession and cultural destruction. By the 1890s, British ambition reached its peak. Some leaders dreamed of a continuous empire from Cape Town to Cairo. Figures like Cecil Rhodes embodied this ruthless vision. It helped lead to the Second Boer War in 1899, a long and controversial conflict that exposed the moral and financial costs of empire. As Queen Victoria's reign ended in 1901, Britain looked unbeatable on the map. But beneath the surface, the empire was strained. Rivals were stronger, colonies were organizing, and the burden of holding the world was growing heavier with each passing year.